In this series, lowimpact.org talks with people working to build a mutually owned, democratic, decentralised economy that builds community and doesn't destroy nature. We want to increase collaboration to bring about system change. Find links to the sites mentioned in the videos in the description below. Join the conversation by liking, commenting and subscribing to our channel.
Today I'm talking with Rosie Bristow and Nick Evans of Fantasy Fibre Mill, working to resurrect the flax and linen textile industry in the UK. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Now, you contacted us to talk about commons ideas and the possibility of a textile commons. I think that's really important. Supply chains for textiles are so huge, and the industry is so damaging to the biosphere in so many ways. What attracted you to the commons approach?
So I sort of have a background of working with the makerspace in Newcastle. I used to do a lot of set and costume design out of a makerspace, and I think for me that was a big inspiration for this current project, this current like sustainable fashion project, because I was really inspired with a lot of the open source technology that was used in makerspace. So they had a lot of 3D printers and also Arduinos and sort of different kinds of technology that used either open source software or open source hardware, where the knowledge, I guess, is like a sort of knowledge commons because they're freely sharing the knowledge online. So rather than patenting their new ideas, they're trying to make it this big group project. And so when I was thinking about starting this sort of like textile machinery project, one of my core things that I was really keen on was that it was all open source and that we would share the technology with as many people as possible.
Great.
So for me, that was kind of like, that was a big inspiration. And I guess Farm Hack as well, which is like a website which shares specifically like farming equipment. That was like a big kind of inspiration for some of the machines that we wanted to build. I know Nick's more from like a software background, so maybe that was that a sort of intro to the idea of like commons things?
Well, I guess I was very familiar with the concept of open source, although I think in the software world, the notion of open source has kind of gone quite far from where it started. But yeah, there is obviously this culture of sharing code and the kind of, there's a lot of infrastructure around that we're trying to leverage in our projects like GitHub and things like this, but they have slightly unusual working models, and people need to kind of get used to them, but they're very powerful, I think, once you understand them. I think for me, I guess came quite late to the commons in the sense that I think what we were doing something for a long time, and I didn't realize that it was actually commoning what we were trying to do. It was only afterwards that we realized that that almost kind of existed and that there was all this work that we can now kind of just like, well, hop on the bandwagon in a good sense, I guess. And I think for me, there's something really made me understand. I was slightly confused at first by this term commons, because in my mind, commons refers to something sort of which is there, like the land or maybe the air or water, and which you kind of then steward. But flax is not there, and certainly flax processing is not there to be stewarded. It's something we need to kind of work on together, and comes with sort of I think we'll talk about this later, but sort of different thinking around economic models, and I think that's what commoning is. So there's like, in my mind, there's a difference between commons and commoning, and this commoning thing is very much what so I discovered that's what that's about, this search for sort of ways of organizing ourselves which are not market driven and sort of maybe not state driven either, and somewhere else. So
So I think what I could do is to interview you about the flax industry and the work that you're doing to revive it and bring it into community ownership. And then I can show the recording and the transcript to commons specialists, and then interview them about how the sector might be brought into the commons after they've had time to think about it. I can then show you the recording and transcript of that, and then I can bring you together for a joint discussion to see how we might go forward. And that might work for every sector, actually.
Yeah, No, that sounds like a great approach, because I think it'll give them a chance to really, yeah, think about the whole thing, and then we can digest what their inputs are before we all
Exactly,
come
yeah.
together for a chat.
So, I mean, what the task you've given yourself is massive, isn't it? You basically have to resurrect the old flax and linen industry, but in a small scale and local, decentralized way.
Yeah,
That-
that's it.
That's correct. That's it.
I mean, that could include growers and spinners and weavers and dyers and retailers, a huge network, a lot of planning. And it's more complicated than food. It's a decentralized network of small scale textile producers. Very exciting, but scary.
Yeah, I think
Mainly very exciting.
yeah, mostly we're excited about it. I think yeah, it started off from me sort of wondering whether it was possible to grow my own clothes, because I was volunteering on an organic fruit and veg farm over lockdown, and I was really fascinated by the whole supply chain of planting the seeds, growing the food, and then it getting packed into veg boxes and going off to the customers or going off to restaurants, and really learning about like where food actually comes from and how it's grown. And that got me thinking, what's the textiles equivalent of this? And I read a great book, Fibre Shed by Rebecca Burgess, which is all about her project exploring that in California, where she sort of tries to create a wardrobe that's from 150-mile radius of her house. And sort of like you said, it's this big network of farmers and processors and spinners and weavers and dyers and knitters and like fashion designers, and she ends up putting this network together that became the first fibre shed. And I was really fascinated by that idea, and so sort of looked into, can I do that in the UK? And really that's what made me realize that there's this big gap, which is that there isn't any processing equipment in the UK. So I spoke to lots of farmers who were like, yeah, we'd love to try growing flax. And I spoke to a lot of fashion designers or interior designers who were really interested in the idea of like locally grown, organic, like regenerative fiber, that obviously doesn't come with all of the like bad environmental downsides of like importing stuff from the other side of the world or using like plastic derived fabrics.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was no machinery, so that's what sort of set off on this journey to try and actually build machines from scratch, that would be an appropriate scale for this kind of like idea we had. And I met Nick, came and volunteered at the first ever flax harvest that I held, and was incredibly enthusiastic about the whole thing. So so we met at this flax harvest, and then you almost straight away started building one of the machines and one of our first prototypes, like after we met, which was great because I was like too busy to get started on it at the time.
So you've already built machines.
Oh yeah,
we have machines.
We have so many. Yeah, we're on to like our third prototypes of like quite a few.
As I said, he likes to get involved with.
Oh, it's the cat. Hello, cat.
Okay, out the way.
Yeah. So, well, do you want to talk a bit about the different machines we're working on, Nick?
Yeah, I can move into that. Yeah, so I think, well, maybe give you should I give you a sort of update of where we are at the moment? So
yeah,
is that a good yeah. So I guess so Rosie described our meeting in that flax field in Essex, which I think that year, was it 2021?
Yeah.
Was probably, to our knowledge, the largest amount of flax grown in the UK that year, which was about 1 hectare.
Yeah, since the 50s, I think. Now there's quite a few more projects that have started doing it, which is really exciting. But that year, that was like the biggest amount that had been grown in decades. So it was quite experimental at the time.
Quite, and all hand harvested. But so at that time, I think. So Rosie, you just started your masters and you'd started building these sort of more like hand prototypes of the machines. and pointed me towards Studio Hilo, who are a Berlin-based sort of textile design studio who designed a tabletop spinning machine. And I this immediately caught my imagination because it was small, it was, Arduino driven.
What was that word?
Arduino.
Arduino?
It's
Yes,
like a tiny computer, I guess. Is that how you describe it?
Yeah, I guess, yeah. Actually, Arduino is one of the sort of open source success stories. It's like open source hardware, so it's like a very small computer which is used for powering 3D printers or all kinds of like home hobby kind of automation projects.
Wow.
So basically, I've got one behind me, but I'd have to unplug it to show you. So basically, we that project was open source, so we built that and very quickly realized, oh, this is great, but this only does a tiny weeny like end step of the process. And if we want to actually process, if we want to create a micro mill, so a small mill, if we want to take fiber from all the way from plant to yarn, we're going to need to build a lot more machines. And this kind of started us off on a journey of basically looking at a lot of historical textbooks of historical machinery and
Oh wow.
of how flax processing happened. And I kind of like zoomed through a bunch of steps. Rosie and I kind of slowly built this up over some time, and we can go more into that if you want. But basically, around about a year ago, someone from Heriot-Watt University, Jack, sort of really encouraged Rosie to turn this into a business, and we applied for a grant, or multiple grants from the UK government, from Innovate UK, and I got funded, got an Innovate UK Transformative Technologies grant at the start of last year. Well, actually, it kicked in June. And that's allowed us to build out a mill in Scotland, in East Lothian, in East Linton, actually,
Right.
where we're building out the prototypes of our machine, and allowed us to get a bit of engineering expertise on board. It allowed us to sort of spend more time doing it.
So you've built a mill already?
We have a mill, yeah. So basically, there are 4 machines. So I'll run through flax processing flax processing 101 is you have straw.
Flax straw.
Yeah.
Flax straw. You need to the first thing you do is you need to break up the outer woody core. So we have a first machine which is called a breaker. So we pass it through the breaker. It's some big rollers that kind of crush it. Then we put it through a machine called the scutcher, which is wooden blades that spin and kind of bash against the fibers and get the outer, further remove the outer woody bit. And then it goes through a series of combs, which kind of comb that all off, and you get fibers that actually look quite a lot like hair.
I've got some here.
Yeah, so that's flax fiber. And these machines, which is really exciting, these machines are working. So we have them in our mill in Scotland. We can extract fiber from flax. I mean, we need to do some fine tuning. We need to make them a bit more usable. We need to sort of see how we can make them, more efficient. But
it's an exciting stage. They're sort of like, working prototypes now.
Working
Great.
prototypes.
Yeah.
Can I just ask?
Yeah.
Why flax? Why not hemp or nettles or other plants?
Mostly just for practicality reasons. So they're all 3 you just mentioned are all bast fibers, meaning the fiber is in the stalk, and they're actually processed very similarly. So we're really hoping actually that the machinery we're making could be like modified slightly to like maybe also work for hemp, for example, if we made it bigger, because hemp's much bigger. But the main reason I chose flax to start with is just because it's the easiest to farm.
Right.
And hemp, because of its legal status, it's
easier than nettles, or is nettles no good?
Well, you can't really farm nettles. Obviously, you can harvest them. You can go out in the woods and like find them, but trying to convince a farmer to grow nettles on purpose, I think would be difficult. And actually, I think nettles are a bit more difficult to process. But they have like more nodules on the stems.
Right.
So in
the
terms
plant to
of
fiber ratio might not be very favorable.
but they produce similar stuff. But I think yeah, it was mostly just because in terms of convincing a farmer to grow a field full of plants for us to process, flax is like the easiest one. You can like if you've got the license to grow hemp, hemp is also like a great option, but there's a huge amount of paperwork you have to go through with the UK government, and you have to be quite a well-established farm. You can't just be a random person in their back garden applying for a hemp license because
Why is that? What's the problem with hemp?
so hemp, because it's really closely related to cannabis, it's actually controlled.
But you can't smoke it, can you? There's doesn't.
No,
Nothing...
it's really silly. It doesn't make any sense, but because it's so closely related to cannabis, it is
Oh, it doesn't
presided
make any
over
sense. So
by
it's like sending me to jail because I'm related to a murderer.
yeah. Well, yeah, it doesn't make any sense, but that's why. So basically, it's not sort of controlled by DEFRA, the Department for Rural and Agricultural Affairs. It's presided over by the Department for Firearms and like drugs and the kind of like, so
No
you've got to
sensible.
apply to that government department for a special license to be allowed to grow it. And there's a lot of rules, like it can't be seen by the public, so you're not allowed to grow it in a farm that has a road next to it or a farm with a public footpath through it. So it's kind of only really remote farms or massive farms where you can grow it in your like central field that doesn't have any like there's just a lot of like loopholes. I mean, there are, I think a couple of years ago there was maybe like 14 or so farms in the UK that have hemp licenses. So there's a few places that do it. But obviously I don't own land myself, so I couldn't even begin to like do the paperwork to like whereas like flax, you don't need a special like permission slip to grow flax.
I think also hemp is a slightly harder plant to process because it's bigger and it's
massive,
kind of tougher, and there is a bit of a sort of a funny thing in the community between hemp and flax where hemp's very trendy at the moment and people will always say, well, why, let's do hemp, but actually flax is a sort of potentially a superior fiber, but
yeah,
they're very much
I think
on
it
a par
depends on your I think it depends on your processing equipment.
Yeah,
but yeah,
exactly, yeah.
But yeah, I think if it was really easy to grow hemp, would probably be doing both, just like for fun, just to see what different things we could make. But yeah, we're focusing on flax to start with. Just
what successes have you had so far? I mean, does your machinery work? What successes have you had?
So like Nick was saying, so the first two machines are now working, which is really exciting. So this is quite a recent development. We've just got them all hooked up to their motors and got the right size of motor to be able to like crunch through all of the flax. So we're now at a stage of fine tuning the next two machines. So the next two steps are drafting and then spinning the fiber into a yarn. And those machines we've got prototypes of, but they require a lot of I guess us actually learning how to use them and fine tune them, because one of the funny things about inventing your own machines is they don't come with instruction manuals. So we've now got these machines that we don't 100% know how to get the best like fiber out of them. We need to kind of sit down for several weeks of feeding fiber into them and adjusting all the settings and kind of figuring out like how to actually make good quality yarn out of them. So you
haven't made any linen yet?
No, not yet, but soon, hopefully. I mean, I've made some myself from like hand process stuff, so like hand processing, hand spinning on like an old school spinning wheel, and then like hand weaving it, which is very satisfying to think like, oh, here's a little bit of fabric I've made that I've done all the steps of. But not yet from our machines. We've made some sort of string, I'd say. We've made some twine, our sort of first attempt at using the spinning machine, but it could definitely, we're kind of at a like refining the process stage at the moment.
So just moving away from the processes for a little bit, how does your work link to a sense of place and community? because that's very important in the commons world, obviously.
Yeah, I think well, I think so. One of the reasons we chose flax is because, in the first place, is because flax is essentially a native fiber to the UK. So if you're looking at what fibers are, what fibers you'd want to use to make clothing in the UK, you'd look at flax and then hemp and wool, basically. So in that sense, that choice already was very much about what can I use that's around me. And then looking more locally, what the intention of the machinery that we have is basically to enable what you call vertical integration, so that you could have in one farm or in one place, um, you, you could grow flax in the sort of immediate surrounding area. That flax could then be gathered, pulled together, and all processed in this local processing hub, all the way through to yarn, which would then be woven or either by local weavers and then could be made into clothes by local designers. So we see our machinery and our vision for textile processing is very much enabling these like place-based processing facilities,
Right.
and which then also enable community, because I think this is this is what we need, and this
Right, so
approach could then
the whole process would be could happen in one town or one district.
Yeah, and
exactly.
and so like for me, from where I'm based in Scotland, is on a little farm, Fantasy Farm, which does organic fruit and veg. But this year we're growing some flax, and we're also experimentally growing some dye plants, and then we've got all this processing equipment like in the steading in one of the barns. And we're really trying to build sort of like farm scale equipment. So the idea would be we can like process our own crop. And again, this is one of the reasons why we're so keen on it being open source, is when we're thinking about like the idea of scaling up, actually we don't want to become a massive factory. What our ideal thing would be lots of little hubs all over the place,
Right.
that can process everybody's like local fiber in their location. So lots of small like regional hubs rather than like one big centralized factory, which I think would just end up kind of like repeating some of the problems with the current fashion industry. Sort of like,
Yeah, I think a lot of the fiber plants grown in Europe end up in China to be processed, don't they? Which just seems insane to me.
Yeah, no, that's right. I think it's about 90% actually. I think in
my God.
France, I was reading some stats on it recently, and they were saying, only about 10% maybe remains within France to get processed, and the rest of it is sent overseas. But that is sort of starting to change actually. So me and Nick went on a bit of a field trip last year, or was it 2 years ago now?
2 years ago, yeah.
To Normandy, and we visited a organic flax farm and a processing mill that does the first step of the process, and then it's the spinning that it is normally sent to China for spinning. But whilst we were there, we were chatting to like a French fashion designer who was saying that they know of 2 new spinning mills that are like opening up in France. So they're also having a big movement towards relocalizing their clothing industry within France, and like more spinning mills are opening up, which is really exciting.
Oh, great. Yeah.
And they're like much further ahead than the UK, because even though they kind of took the spinning part overseas, all the other processes, so the farming and the breaking and scutching, they've actually like kept that as like a industry within France.
Brilliant.
Something else I'm quite
sorry.
Yeah, something else just to hop on the sense of place thing I'm quite interested in as well is bridging the sort of urban rural divide, because a lot of there's 4 machines, and the first 2 are very much agricultural and are best placed in a sort of agricultural setting, but the second 2 machines are sort of finer and lighter, and you can put them more in an urban context
where people are, so that they
Yeah, and then you could that would be a way of kind of connecting the city to its surroundings. So you could have flax grown in the surroundings, and it could come in and be processed then more in an urban setting. So that's another interesting sort of angle to the place-based nature of it.
Yeah, we've launched. I live in Stroud. Actually, Stroud used to be a textiles town. I mean, you could almost say that textiles were the sort of real engine of the transition from feudalism to capitalism. You know, first wool and then cotton.
Well, I
And
mean,
you never
textiles
know.
are the story of the Western economy is the story of textiles,
Yes,
basically.
yes. And
Yeah.
so it might be central to the next transition too, to the commons economy. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've recently launched a land commons group in Stroud. So we'll be looking at, trying to get our hands on pockets of land around Stroud, mainly for food production, but yeah, also for, yeah, textiles, flax production as well, possibly.
Yeah. Well, flax is a great dual crop because you can eat the seeds, obviously. So
Yes.
it's meant to be good for both. Has a lot of sort of potential for like interesting side projects, I think, like making linseed oil or
Yeah.
selling flax seeds and all the
Yeah.
different things you can do with the kind of like
Is it the same? Is it
byproducts.
the same plant that produces the fiber also produces the flax seeds?
Yeah, so there's two varieties, but they're very related to each other. So I think you could crossbreed them. So there's the linseed variety is shorter and produces more like flowers and therefore more seeds. And the fiber variety is taller and has less seed, so it's putting more of its efforts into growing tall. And obviously, because the fiber's like in the stalk, that's what you want for fiber. But you can do both with both. So like you can harvest and eat the seeds from the fiber variety, or you could harvest and process the straw from the seed variety, but you just get less of it because they're like much shorter plants. So but yeah, they're almost the same thing.
And flax has this is right, isn't it? It has the blue flowers, so you see the blue fields.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. So I'd think most of the blue flowered kind of fields you see around nowadays are more likely to be for seed production, because it is still quite commonly grown as like a break crop for arable farmers. Um, but yeah, I think there is like a few projects springing up all over the place who are starting to grow fiber flax as well, which is great.
I'm wondering what would actually be commoned. Would it be the machinery, the land for growing, the knowledge, the workshops, the little factories or the shops, all of the above.
I think maybe all of the above. I think definitely in our business plan. I mean, at the moment it's just Nick and me who are in the business together, but we want to make it into a co-op in the future. Like we're sort of quite close to thinking about maybe employing another person. So I think the sort of the mill, like the processing facility, we'd hope would be a cooperative and be something that was like part of the community. And definitely the knowledge, I think the knowledge of how to build the machines and how to use the machines. We're really keen to share that as far and wide as possible and get lots of other people
Yeah,
involved.
could provide quite a lot of jobs, couldn't it, as well?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's kind of a huge project if you start thinking about what would it take for the UK to actually produce all of its own fabric, like within the UK. That would be a huge like undertaking and
Well,
require.
I was going to ask about your ambitions and what kind of a scale you think this can get to.
Yeah, so I think like for me, I think Fantasy Fibre Mill plays sort of multiple roles in this picture. So I think one of the roles is actually as a yarn producer. So that's kind of where how Rosie and I got into it, was wanting to have textiles to make clothing.
Mm.
So we'd like to sort of actually actually reach that end goal. We've kind of like in trying to achieve that, we've sort of taken this massive detour. But it would be nice. So one of the things that Fancy Fibre Mill wants to be is a yarn producer, or actually a textile producer. But because of the machinery and the role of the machinery, I think what we would like to see happen is for us to be a provider, basically, of a sort of infrastructure which other people can tap into and set
Right.
up in their locality.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I think when you ask, how can this be common? This is, I think I would almost want to reinterpret that as what's the business model behind that? And when I say what's the business model, I don't mean how do we get rich? I mean, how
Yeah.
do we make this work financially for everyone involved?
Yeah.
So how can we have a model where we can work on machinery, we can set up distributed infrastructure, we can have people in their local community building these machines, owning the machines in the sense of if they break, they can fix them, but yet provide, a living and a revenue for Rosie, for me, and for everyone else that's involved. So I see us as producing the end product, but also as enabling this infrastructure to emerge. And that's something which is relevant to Britain, but also relevant to other countries across Europe. Like through the Fibershed network, we've got a lot of interest from people, in Spain, in Germany, and in Denmark, who are, looking to these models and who also would like to, have infrastructure and would like to produce yarn. And the concept can be applied to other fibers as well. So, actually it's kind of easier to process wool, and other people are doing that. So I think, that's the role I see.
Yeah.
That's the vision I have.
And when it comes to the sort of the future use vouchers idea to get investment, I wonder whether there'll be, you could issue vouchers for linen, for the finished textiles.
Sorry, I'm not familiar with that. What's the
For example,
future use voucher?
So, for example, I always use the example of an energy commons because it seems to be the easiest way to explain it. If you have an energy commons group and they want to put up a wind turbine, say, and they don't have any money to do it, at the moment, you'd have to go to the bank and borrow money and get into debt and pay the interest over years, or you'd sell equity in your business. And then, so either of those two routes, it's not going to be commons very long. It's going to be a capitalist business, or but instead, so the idea came from a senior research fellow at UCL, is you issue vouchers for the energy to be redeemed for the energy when the infrastructure is built. So you sell these vouchers. That's how you get your money to put up the wind turbine. And when it starts producing electricity, then people can redeem those vouchers. So the vouchers are denominated in kilowatt hours. Which is very important because that's inflation proof, because a kilowatt hour is the same in 20 years time as it is now. It doesn't change. And so in your case, the vouchers would be for, I don't know, yarn.
The yarn,
I think,
I
think the vouchers could definitely be, there could be various different things. It could be yarn, they could be cloth, they could even be clothing, depending on how far you want to. But I think I really love this idea. I think it's a brilliant idea. And I definitely see it as applicable to what we're doing. I think at this very moment, the big difference between what we're doing and, say, the energy commons is that if you buy a wind turbine, that's going to produce X number of kilowatt hours a day. That there is no risk in the technology. And at the moment, I would say there's quite a high risk in our technology because we can't tell you our machine can produce X. But hopefully in 2 years we will be able to tell you that.
Yeah, we're kind of right at the beginning of that journey. We have spoken about that funding idea. I just hadn't heard it called like a future use token. I feel
the fancy name is use credit obligations, but we've decided
I feel like
it's too much of a mouthful.
How we funded. My band funded one of our albums like that. So we did a crowdfunder where everybody bought the album, they bought the CDs and the vinyl and the whatever merch they wanted in advance, and then we made it, and then we gave it to them once we'd done it. So
you had confidence that you'd produce good music.
Yeah.
You're all experimental at the moment, so you're not in that position.
But maybe once we've got yarn, like once we've actually made yarn that we're really pleased with the quality of, I think then that'll be the sort of big kickoff point, because there's loads of people we've chatted to who are really excited about the idea, but they're all like, oh, that's great, like we'd love to see a yarn sample, and we're like, oh, we're not quite there yet, but
Right.
yeah, once we've got yarn samples that we're confident in, then I think that would be a great way to do like a big crowdfunding.
I mean, you could produce some
thing.
sort of a prospectus. I mean, yeah, it's rather than vouchers for finished goods, they could be a series of agreements to buy vouchers for finished goods further down the line. That you could produce sort of prospectuses that you can estimate your future production and the quality, and you'd be asking investors how much they'd be prepared to pay for vouchers in the future when certain milestones have been met. And
Well, I
that
think I had an interesting discussion about this with well, I think it was with Dill, right, where he was saying, obviously if you buy a voucher now, it's more high risk, so you would get sort of more for your money, but then that is worth doing because the value of the voucher increases later on. So there was some sort of financial way of encouraging people to take on that
take
risk
on
earlier.
the risk.
Take on the
because
risk.
The earlier you get in, you'd have to provide greater discounts because the risk would be greater.
Yeah, because the risk is higher. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, at the moment, we're very lucky to have grant funding, so that's not too much of a concern for us at the moment. But yeah,
yeah, okay.
It's definitely at some point.
So back to more sort of practical. Where do you get your seeds from?
Oh, that is a good question.
The $1 million question. Yeah.
So this year we have seeds from Elsams, who are a seed kind of importing and dealing company based in the UK. And we got them as part of a variety trial that the Soil Association are organizing. So we've got 3 varieties, and we're going to grow them and keep track of their height and weight and different things like that for this variety trial. But in general, actually, it's very difficult to get hold of fiber flax seeds.
When you say import, where do they come from?
So these are from Vanderbilt Zaden and Vlas, which is a Dutch company. And so there's a few big seed breeders in Europe. So Vanderbilt is one of them. There's, I can't remember the name. Terre de Lin, yeah, the French one. So this is actually another project that Nick's been working on a lot with Fibershed Scotland, has been to create a UK source of seeds which are unpatented. So at the moment, all the seeds we're able to get our hands on through Elsams and from these European seed breeding companies are copyrighted, which means when you buy them, you have to sign a big disclaimer saying, I will not save seeds for the next year. You have
we need open source. We need open source seeds.
You have to rebuy them every year because they're patented to the company that bred them. So we actually have started a project to try and get a UK source of seeds which are unpatented, so it would mean people would be allowed to save them. And it's one of these things that you don't realize how complicated it is until you start looking into it, and then it's this whole like can of worms. Nick's been getting into the real nitty-gritty paperwork though. Do you want to talk a bit about what you're up to on the seed paperwork?
Yeah, so it's actually very, very exciting. And we're so some people that Rosie knows in the States, they're called Fibre Revolution. So they're a company doing very similar things to what we're doing in
Oregon,
in the flax space in Oregon. Yeah. And they're quite a few years ahead. So I would call them, they're by now expert seed breeders, but are interested in this idea of promoting unpatented seeds and are more in this sort of commoning spirit. So we're hoping to import some seeds from them, which would be unpatented, which we'd then be able to grow out for seed and then sort of bulk out, and then that would be a supply we'd be able to distribute. Again, it'd be really interesting to apply commonings models to it. But in sorting this import involves getting what's called a phytosanitary certificate, getting certain disease controls done. It requires registering for multiple UK government portals to declare the import. So it's really quite an intense intense paperwork intensive process.
Yeah.
Which I think is why at the moment there is in the UK only one supplier of fibre flaxseed. But we're very keen to make this work, make it happen, and open up a new.
Right. So what other barriers do you face, and what needs to happen to remove them or to get around them?
Kind of just the paperwork that Nick was describing. So basically, in order to import seeds, we have to register officially as seed importers with the UK government. So we've got to fill out a whole bunch of forms, and then we have to get the seeds themselves certified to say that they don't have any like strange diseases. They're not going to like spread any kind of weird like import diseases with the seeds. So, and I guess, I mean, on a bigger level, I guess barriers would be, it would be great if huge companies would stop patenting their seeds, because it's crazy that like the plants reproduce themselves, but you have to sign up to like essentially a subscription model where you rebuy the seeds every year from the company, because they don't want you to save them,
Well,
because then their customers would all be one-time customers where you'd buy the seeds once and then have your own supply from then on. So we're trying to just kind of like bust our way through all this paperwork so that we can get the first initial batch of seeds, and then from then on hopefully people can buy them and then save their own seed in the future. So I think it will be really worth it. I'm kind of seeing it as like it's like a one-time large amount of paperwork, and then once we've done it once, we've got the starting seeds, and then everybody can just save their own kind of going forward.
Are you connected with any other like-minded organisations in the UK? I think you've been working with FibreShed, haven't you? How do you collaborate?
So, I mean, FibreShed is a fantastic network. So FibreShed is sort of business, I think, based in the UK, in the US, but they have affiliates all over the world. And so they have online meetups, and through FibreShed we've met some really fantastic people. I think I'd like to shout out Jordan Masters, who's at the University of West Virginia, who we connected with a few years ago and started building out some of the machinery, and he's been like absolutely sort of amazing in taking the machinery and thinking along with us, looking at the historical material and building out. It was really with him that we realized what we need is more than one machine. We need this suite of machines. We need a whole collection of them, and together. So on our Discord channel, which we can Discord server, chat server that we can put a link to, we've got a sort of community of people working on these machines. And so he's mainly focused on wool and cotton actually, and is already producing wool yarn with the machinery. So he's really a proof that it works.
Mm-hmm.
And I think so. Yeah, in the UK, there's various FibreShed organisations.
Also, the Soil Association we've been working with quite closely, specifically the Scottish branch, because that's where the mill's based up in Scotland. So we've been working a lot with Colleen from the Soil Association on this sort of innovative farmers field lab project.
So the textiles you'll be producing, the clothes that you'll be producing, will not only be commons and local, they'll be organic.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm really keen that like everything we produce is going to be organic and regenerative. So it's not only like not having a negative impact on the earth, but it's actually having like a positive impact on the earth. And actually, so I'm currently a part-time PhD student, and what my research is kind of looking into is flax and its impacts, and I'm hoping to be able to write up essentially like a big life cycle assessment of a linen garment from it being grown, processed, used, and then eventually composted at the end of its life. Because obviously,
I'd love to see that.
If it's all made of natural fibers and natural dyes, rather than sitting in landfill, it will get composted and put all its like nutrients back in the soil, and then to be able to compare that to a sort of like average like polyester or polycotton garment, and so really get some like crunch all the numbers on what its effects are on the world. So we're doing a lot of yeah, sort of collaborating with farmers, collaborating with Fibre Shed, collaborating with other machine builders. So like we were saying, Studio Hilo in Berlin. And we've recently started a collaboration with a group based in Wessex, which is really exciting. So this is kind of like a trial run of what we hope to do a lot more of in the future. So the Wessex group are working with the University of Plymouth, and they've been growing hemp and flax, which they want to turn into yarn. And so we've sent them all of the files to build out some of our machinery. So they're kind of doing a trial run of whether our instruction manuals and diagrams make any sense. So they're going to try and build a copy of our machines and kind of give us feedback
I wanted to talk about your instruction manuals and things. First of all, so price. So the big corporations who exploit cheap labor and they use, you know, cheap environmentally damaging inputs, and they have huge economies of scale, and they don't pay tax, and they're going to undercut you. What can we do about that?
I mean, do you want to talk about this, Nick? I feel like we both had some quite strong ideas.
Yeah, I think we both have strong ideas on this. So yeah, I think there's multiple angles you can take on this. So first of all, you know, we're not aiming to compete with Primark or with these you know, these globalized supply chains that rely on exploitative labor. So that's, you know, that's not the objective, and that will never be the objective. They will always be cheaper. I think if we want to talk about that, I think we need to talk about this is sort of education. Well, there's an I don't want to be too directive, but if you spend your money at Primark, you're making a choice for how to spend that money, and there is a sort of a discussion around the cost of clothing, where people will say, yeah, but you can't expect everyone to pay loads of money for clothing. But I think if you look at consumer behavior, it's not, you need to separate consumer behavior from the poverty question. So yes, there are certain people who cannot afford clothing, but that's a different discussion from people who can afford clothing and decide to spend lots and lots and lots of money on lots and lots and lots of cheap clothing. So basically, one of the things we would like is that there is a changing relationship of us with our clothing, with our garments, and that we spend a bit more money on slightly more expensive clothing.
So you don't buy so many.
You don't buy so many
shirts or shirts.
And also, if you think about it as not just its one-off cost when you buy it in the shop, but it's price per wear. So if you buy something high quality, you could keep it for decades.
Yes.
You could even, you know, I have some clothes that used to be like my mum's or my grandma's that I still get good wear out of because they were good quality to start with.
It's the quality that's important, isn't it?
Whereas if you're buying cheap clothes, they might actually be more expensive per wear because they wear out so quickly. And also, if you think about the true cost in terms of like what is it costing to environmental degradation or like your health or like all the sort of like hidden costs. That something, I don't know. I think it is going to be more expensive.
But that's the angle. That's the angle.
I think that's fine.
But something I feel very strongly about at the moment is the problem with this discussion at the moment is that if you tell consumers right now, go and spend more money on clothing, often they're not getting better quality, and they're not actually getting very much improved supply chains.
Yeah, there's a lot of greenwashing.
There's a lot of greenwashing, and the current fashion industry, if you're a fashion brand today, your business is, you know, essentially designing clothes that then get made by this global supply chain. So, and the problem is, I think for a lot of consumers, this has kind of undermined this argument, because they'll tell you, oh yeah, but I paid more for that jumper and it wasn't better quality, or but I believe that in a model where we've really relocalized, you know, where you know that your clothes are being made in that factory down the road that you can go and visit, that kind of changes your relationship with that garment. Then maybe you
get a job in that. You can get a job,
and you can potentially get a job there. Exactly that. Then we're talking about something different. But right now, I think it's a bit of an illusion that there is a better option. There are slightly better options, but
they're
the
not
fashion
that
industry,
much better.
not that
And I
much
think
better.
the other thing I'm quite interested in is so the kind of models you get for market gardens to sell their produce locally, and they might have like community supported agriculture, like the CSA model, where people buy a veg box every week, but they might upfront pay for it at the start of the year. So
Yeah.
that gives the farmer some like financial security.
That's the same kind of, the CSA model is the future use voucher model, really.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of farms that I've like visited that use a CSA model also have a sliding scale of price model because they don't want to price out like local people who can't afford expensive organic vegetables. So they have a sliding scale where they have options to pay the like normal price. If you can afford it, there's the option to pay more if you want to like kind of donate a bit to the cause. And then there's also options to pay less or even to pay nothing if you're like, struggling. So I think having like there's lots of different pricing models that could be sliding scale. But also, yeah, like Nick said, I think people who are truly experiencing poverty, they're not the ones causing the problem with overconsumption because they are the sort of people who would, buy a cheap t-shirt but then save it and keep it for years because, so I think there is a bit of a
and because we're looking at a
misnomer
commons approach, we can find ways together in communities to help people who have are in difficulty.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
and I think also like we're not trying to solve all the problems ourselves. I think there's not going to be like one big solution to how can we make the supply chain or like how can we make fashion sustainable. There's going to be lots of different little solutions, and actually I think the main solution is to keep wearing and repairing the clothes you already have in your wardrobe right now rather than getting new ones.
So how do we
assuming they're high enough quality?
Yeah,
assuming they're of high enough quality to be repaired.
But yeah, so I think there's loads of different sort of solutions to making fashion sustainable, and then obviously and then what we want to do of making locally available like natural fiber textiles is like one of several solutions.
So how do we replicate what you're doing in as many communities as possible? So you say you're producing guides and toolkits and instruction manuals and things like that. How's that coming on?
It's
you gotta do it yourself first.
It's going well. So this is all very new. So literally yesterday I uploaded a bunch of files of like the models of some of the parts, so this group in Wessex can then cut it out on their CNC router, which is like one of those have you seen them like for woodworking, and they've got like a moving drill bit that like cuts out shapes. So we're sharing the plans initially just with like one group for them to kind of trial run if they're easy to follow instructions. But I think once we're happy that A, the machines work, and B, the instructions work, then we'll do a big sort of publicity announcement to say
we'll help with that,
to say it's ready. And actually Nick's you've already been uploading stuff onto GitHub as well, so some of the instructions are available already on GitHub.
We're kind of doing a hybrid thing where we're sort of sharing. There's a kind of absolute cutting edge of what we're doing which is not yet online, and then there's a version which is slightly further behind which is on our GitHub. And I think once we've sort of got the dust has settled on a few things, we'll kind of put some effort into making it all look a bit nicer and be a bit more organized about it. But it's at the moment we're just like full steam ahead with getting everything working, and where we can sort of putting up little bits of information.
How can people help you? How can they get involved?
Well, they can, if people genuinely want to build a machine, they could join our Discord server. So we've got like an online forum of people who are like all wanting to build machines. So the idea is people can like chat to each other and to us if they run into any like problems with like building stuff. And we've also got an Instagram and a website. So you can kind of like see what we're up to. I think we're hoping to have an open day in July for people to come and also see in real life what we're up to in Scotland. So yeah, so there's a few different ways people can kind of get involved in what we're doing.
I'll
You
get
can
all
buy
those
yarn
links.
once it's available.
Yeah, buy yarn in the future. But yeah, right now, just kind of yeah, we've got a mailing list on our website, or yeah, just joining in basically with what we're up to.
I'll get all those links from you and I'll publish those.
Yeah, that would be great.
Uh,
But yeah, it's Fantasy Fibre Mill. I think if you Google that, it should come up hopefully. But we'll send you the links.
so we want to know how you're progressing. Do you blog? Can we reblog your articles? Can we?
Not really. We do Instagram updates, which I guess are like miniature blogs.
But anyway, we're gonna stay in touch, and I really want to know how you're progressing, and we'll interview you again, and we'll follow your progress. It's really exciting.
We're very excited to be part of this commoning thing.
Yeah. So I'll post the recording of this interview with the transcript, and I'll talk with the commons specialists about it. And I'll interview them as well, and I'll post that, and you can both think about what the other is talking about, and then we can bring you together, and then you can ask each other questions, and we can sort of work out a sort of a roadmap.
Really fun. Yeah.
Very exciting.
Yes, that's fantastic. Okay, well, I'll speak to you very soon, and this is very exciting, and I really want to follow your progress.
Great. Thanks so much, Dave.
Okay, speak to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
If you like our channel, please consider liking this video and subscribing. The more people like our videos and subscribe to our channel, the more the YouTube algorithm will share them. It doesn't cost anything, so please press the like and subscribe buttons. And if you click the bell icon just underneath as well, you'll get a notification when we upload a new video. Thank you.